Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Solutions Info. I'm so happy that you could join us today. We have another great show for you, the family caregiver. Caregiving is not easy. We'll be the first to admit that. You're finding it out. If you're a caregiver for someone that has Alzheimer's or some other related dementia, you already know how difficult it is. So this show is for you to learn and to maybe get some tips, some information, some good advice from all of our experts that we have here on our program, so it will help you along your journey. So I want to invite you to email me if you have a question, if you have a comment, or if there's a certain topic you would like us to cover. And you can email me directly. My email address is delray@arden-courts.com. Again, that's delray@arden-courts.com. I'd love to hear from you. So I want you to know that take a piece of paper, take a pencil, not if you're driving, because we have people that are listening on our local radio, but you want to take some notes because it's really great to listen and learn. But, you know, the information that you get, you know, sometimes we're so stressed out, we can't remember everything that we hear. And so you want to take some notes and jot down some things. And it's really great because then you can go back and review and it will jog your memory about some of the things that you learn. We are live from Boca Raton, Florida. One of the things that I would like to share with our local listeners here in South Florida is a free seminar that's coming up for caregivers. And it's going to be on Wednesday, September 21st, 2016, at the Arden Courts Memory Care Community of Delray Beach. And this is going to be from 10:30 in the morning until noon. And this particular topic is going to be of great interest to people who have loved ones at home. It's called Lost on Foot. Now, we've talked about the Silver Alert program. We talked a little bit about people wandering. And, you know, there is a huge chance of someone that's going to wander out of their home and get lost and get themselves into trouble or worse. And so this particular seminar is geared to teaching you about how to prevent that wandering and what happens here in South Florida if someone does wander off on foot and what you need to know and what you need to do. So it's a great seminar coming up. It's absolutely free. You can attend and learn, and you can even bring your loved one to be safe in a caring environment if you need respite care. So all the seminars that all the Arden Courts in the country provide also offer free respite care for your loved one so that you can come to the seminar and not worry about where your loved one is and making sure that they're having a nice time with activities with people that are qualified to care for them. So if you're interested in this seminar, it's easy to RSVP. You can either email me at the email address I just gave, which is delray@arden-courts.com, or you can call directly to the building at 561-498-5552, and we'll get your information, and we'll be happy to reserve a seat for you. Also, I would like to thank Arden Courts because they make this show possible. Arden Courts is a memory care community. They specialize in memory care. As a matter of fact, that's all they do. And they will help you, the caregiver, as much as they help your loved one who has the memory loss, because they offer support groups, lots of resources, wonderful seminars like the one coming up here in Delray Beach. They have them all across the country. Arden Courts has about 52 buildings across the country to help caregivers. And hopefully, if you're listening or watching, there's one near you. One of the things that Arden Courts likes to do is to help the caregivers have the resources they need. This is called the 36-Hour Day Book. It is a wonderful resource for caregivers. This is a book that will tell you the difference between the different types of dementia. It will give you tips. It will explain behaviors. It is full of information to help you, the family caregiver. And it's absolutely free from Arden Courts. All you have to do is call their toll-free number, and that number is 888-478-2410. I'll say it again, 888-478-2410. Give them a call. Tell them that you heard about the free offer on the Caregiver Solutions Info Show, and they'll get your name and address and mail one out to you. It's a great resource, and I'm sure you'd like to have this in your library. So today we're going to be talking about the caregivers, you, the caregivers, and what caregivers go through, what you need to know, how to be prepared, better prepared to be a caregiver. I'm very excited to have my guest here with me today because she has over 20 years experience helping people in the field of caregiving and in the field of dementia and Alzheimer's. And I'd like to welcome today Dawn Epstein. Hi, Dawn.
Hi, Marcia. Thank you so much for having me. Very happy to be here.
I am so glad that you are here today. Dawn is very experienced. She educates caregivers on all types of topics, and we've invited her here today to share with you because we bring experts here for you to learn from, and Dawn certainly is an expert. Dawn is the executive director of the Alzheimer's Care Resource Center here in South Florida. And Dawn, you have a couple letters after your name. It says MACP. Tell us what MACP stands for.
MACP is a master's in the art of counseling psychology. So I did get my master's in psychology and aimed at that field of interest because I wanted to help others, and then kind of stumbled into the world of Alzheimer's disease and was really fascinated by what I saw there, and from there started working with families, and over time just saw the incredible need of what these family caregivers were going through, and then really devoted the rest of my years to caregivers of dealing with family members or loved ones afflicted with Alzheimer's disease.
Well, that's wonderful because, you know, when people fall in, I don't think we just fall into it. I think somehow we're exposed to it, and we realize that this is the niche that we want to be in, because we have the people that are in this field. I really truly believe most of them have the heart for it, and I know you have the heart for it, and you have the not only the passion but the compassion.
Well, thank you. I think things happen for a reason, and the reason I'm in this particular and the reason I'm here speaking to you and trying to help caregivers is because there is such a need out there. The one thing we find with caregivers in general, especially with Alzheimer's disease, is the stigma. Although it's getting better, a lot of families don't want to talk about it, so they try to take care of things themselves instead of seeking information, instead of seeking respite options and resources initially at the time of diagnosis. Unfortunately, too many caregivers wait until it's impacted their own health, or there are other implications, or they just simply can't take another day, and now we're in crisis.
And why do you think caregivers wait or don't reach out? Is there, in all the years experience that you have, is there one or two things that you think is the reason that they don't do that?
Well, they obviously, first, lack of education. A lot of times, and the physicians in today's medical community, they have enough time to see you, to do the testing and do the best job they can. So it's certainly not anything against the physicians in our area. They're some of the best in the country. However, they really don't have time to educate caregivers or families about the disease. Here's what you're going to see. You're going to start to see changes in your loved one's ability to communicate with you. It's going to affect their emotions. Yes, they're going to be repetitive. this could affect their behaviors, and really explain what's going on in the disease process and what they can expect. So they're shocked when their loved one, all of a sudden, who's always been a calm and very gentle person, acts out either aggressively or shows signs of agitation, or has different behavior changes in personality that can all come with the disease.
Right. And that could be because no one has really given them a heads up of what to expect. And like you said, the doctors are so busy, they diagnose sometimes, the dementia, they refer maybe to the neurologist who does all the testing, but who's really there to hold the caregiver's hand and say, okay, this is what's going to happen. Here's a checklist. Here's what you need to look. They just don't have the time to do that.
Or have someone to call when you need on the spot advice, or you see a new behavior, showing up in your loved one. How do I handle this effectively without making the situation worse? Or how do I handle, you add your own health implications. A lot of the caregivers are older and have health issues as well. We have a lot of caregivers that are in the sandwich generation that they're balancing so many duties, basically taking care of perhaps their parents, and they have a growing family of their own too, and their own health needs that may be neglected over time.
Right.
So you add that to the whole mix, and you see a lot of the effects on them coming out in health ways, and they start having a lot of issues themselves too, and that brings everything to a head.
Yeah, it's really hard. I mean, it's hard enough to take care of someone that has dementia with all that comes with it, without being stressed out, without being ill yourself, without having all of the things that get thrown into the mix. And we're going to talk about all of that today. Everything that John mentioned is something that caregivers need to know. They need to be given the information before they get into a situation and be forewarned, and like we said, a heads up about what to expect. And of course, not every situation is going to fall into that a cookie cutter scenario, but certainly if you're aware of things that can happen, you can at least not be totally blindsided by them.
To be prepared.
Yes, to be prepared.
And give yourself breaks, because take the respite options, and to find out those options not only educate you about the disease and the disease process, but make sure you know the resources in your area. Join a support group. That's a fantastic way to find out what's available in your area, to get the support either a weekly basis or however often you feel. You're not signing up for a lifetime commitment. These are groups of people that are dealing with the same types of day-to-day struggles that you are as a caregiver, and there's someone there to help guide you through the process. From that, you may feel you need more support. You can, many people aren't aware of this, but there are one-to-one psychotherapy that's available through Medicare if you have Medicare, and a lot of different area agencies will come to the house even and provide the service for caregivers that are really needing more of a one-on-one. But a support group is a great way to really connect you with the resources and know what's out there, so you know where to turn. You basically have a plan.
And that's what we're talking about today. We're going to be talking about your plan. What is your plan? If you don't have a plan, keep that piece of paper and pencil ready and start making a plan. We're going to take our very first commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to Dawn about all of these things and more. So stay tuned. We will be right back.
Being unable to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's or related dementias, even among their caregivers. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Somewhere at the corner of bewildered and confused is a lost mother, a father, a sibling, a grandparent. Wandering is a common symptom of Alzheimer's or related dementias, and can often make those who care for a loved one feel just as lost. If you're looking for a place that's safe and secure, look to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Feelings of depression, isolation, and frustration are common among persons living with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's common among those who care for them, too. It takes a lot of patience and courage. It also takes knowing when you can no longer do it alone. At Arden Courts, memory care is all we do. Talk to us. We know. We understand. We can help. Don't let guilt keep you from making the right decision. Visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Being unable to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's or related dementias, even among their caregivers. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do.
1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Hi, and we're back. I have my guest today, Dawn Epstein. She's the Executive Director of the Alzheimer's Care Resource Center here in South Florida. And we're talking about caregivers today, what you need to know as a caregiver to help you along your journey. So, Dawn, thank you again for being here with us.
Welcome.
Let's talk about what is probably the most important thing to tell caregivers, to educate them when they say, I don't know what to do. How do I deal with certain behaviors? I don't know how to communicate. Kind of bring that out to the forefront and give us some examples of some behaviors and some communication techniques, as I think that's probably one of the biggest things caregivers need to know.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Typically, people come to us with a new behavior that they've seen their loved one exhibit. And what we try to initially tell, regardless of what that behavior is, it's important to know when someone suffers from a disease like Alzheimer's disease, their ability to communicate and to understand the language or how to express themselves is obviously is impaired by the disease process. They can't explain to you if they're feeling sick, if they're hungry. So behavior becomes a means of communicating. So as caregivers, we now have to kind of become detectives to figure out what the behavior is trying to tell us.
Okay, so perfect example, I think. Just, I throw in some analogies here because I think a lot of people learn by analogies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Babies, newborn babies, they're little,
Right.
They can't talk to you, they haven't learned the language yet of the family,
Right.
and they cry. And when they cry, you got to figure out, are they wet? Are they hungry?
Exactly.
Is something hurting them? They have a tummy ache?
Right.
What is hurting them? So is that a lot like what we're talking about here with a person with dementia who can't tell you exactly what's wrong and now they're going to cry or act out?
Right. Absolutely. And we use that same analogy with families. So they say, I can't do this. Well, but a lot of them already have done this. They've done this in their past when they were raising their own children. Yes, you've done this before. It's a little different now because it's obviously someone that had the ability and no longer does. But absolutely, if someone's acting out, let's say they're showing a lot of signs of agitation at certain times of the day. You see a lot of that with sundowning and maybe in the afternoon. That behavior is expressing a need. There's some unmet need that's going on here. Is that person hungry? Mm-hmm. Had they have an accident? Could there be something medically going on? And I would say one of the top reasons we see a drastic change in behavior, even hallucinations and very agitated behavior, is urinary tract infections. It's very common in older individuals, and it really, really can make a person act very different and, like I said, hallucinate, very bizarre behavior.
Yeah, I actually experienced that. And there was a gentleman who was a pussycat, and he was the sweetest, kindest, nicest man. And one day he was totally different. It was a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde situation because he's like, who is this person?
Right.
He totally was different. You just couldn't believe it. And it turned out that, he was tested. He had a urinary tract infection. And once he was recovered from that through antibiotics, and, you always want to push the fluids, and recovered, he was back to normal.
Right.
So that's probably one of the first clues if someone all of a sudden changes behavior very dramatically, very quickly.
Yes.
I think check for UTI.
Yes, UTI. Go see your doctor to rule out any type of infection, any underlying new medical situation that has arisen, and then you have to really go down their needs. Okay, well, is a person drinking enough fluids? Could they be thirsty? That's a big one as well.
And they don't like to
dehydration.
do that for some reason so much when they get dementia. They
Yeah.
don't know that they're thirsty,
Yeah.
first of all.
The signals aren't really connecting to tell them if they're hungry sometimes or thirsty.
Right.
A lot of people they're frustrated if their loved one wants to eat as soon as they just ate, they want to eat again.
Yeah.
Or they don't want to eat because they think they have. The connections aren't being made. So you really have to instigate and not ask. Because some people, a lot of my caregivers will tell me, every time I ask, they say no. Well, then let's not ask, and let's find something that they like to drink or that they like to eat. If you know it's been a while since they ate something or since they had something to drink, and just put it down and let's have a snack and join them.
Right. Don't ask. That's the first.
Right.
Write that down.
Yeah,
don't ask. Right. Just do.
And don't argue.
And don't argue.
Communication is huge. Let's say we've identified, perhaps a person showing agitation, and then we look back in their history and we say, this person used to work. This would have been the time that they would be going to work in the morning. So they're looking for something to do, something meaningful to do. They're antsy. They used to be getting ready and running out the door to go to an office. Well, communicate with this person differently. First, give them something meaningful to do and gain their cooperation by maybe modifying the way you're communicating it to them. In a sense, don't ask, but also put it in such a way, can you help me with something, and give them meaningful tasks without really making, there's something for you to do, because we don't want to make it feel like it's a burden to them. We want to make them feel like they're contributing, and we all need a sense of meaning, that we are contributing members of our household, of society. So it's very important to remember that when you're dealing with someone who obviously has limited capacity, and still give them that sense of contributing.
That's right, because they are living in the past.
Right.
As you have explained, people need to be busy, especially if they're living in the past and now they're going to work, they're going to school, they're going to
give them a job.
Their job, and you want to give them a job. So that's very important because it elevates their self-esteem.
Absolutely.
It empowers them. It keeps them busy. It keeps them focused.
And less agitation later in the day.
Yes.
If you have someone that is busier during the day and doing these types of meaningful activities, it actually will lessen other behaviors that you might see or that the boredom can really lead to.
Right.
You're going to have someone that's maybe showing more agitation in the afternoon because they have had nothing to do all day, nothing with any sense of purpose.
And that's just kind of built up to a
Right.
level where they just
Right.
kind of explode sometimes because internally they're
Understimulated.
Understimulated.
Even with children, to go back to that analogy, there's a certain level of stimulation, and then different people are different as well. It's individual. However, they want to maintain. You don't want to be too bored. You don't want to also take them out into too busy of an environment. You might see some agitation there,
Right. There's
too.
a happy medium. So,
Right.
so someone can actually be understimulated or overstimulated.
Right.
And there's going to be consequences with both of those situations.
Right.
So obviously you see as a caregiver, you have to find a balance and
Right.
and not only a balance with stimulation. We're talking about balancing
In life.
In life.
Yeah, and in their life.
and in your life.
Right.
And this is what it's all about,
Yes.
balancing and learning about all of this.
You're going to have, your days aren't going to go smoothly. You're going to have disruptions. You're going to have things come up, and how you handle that. And obviously, as caregivers, we're under a lot of stress because our days aren't well planned out and choreographed. But how you handle them and try to maintain that peace, because obviously your emotional state is going to affect the interaction with your loved one. In terms of communicating with your loved one to try to minimize behavioral problems or de-escalate something that may be present at that moment, we always recommend, I say, don't ask and don't argue.
Yes.
Well, even if that person is saying they have to go to work today and they haven't worked in 20 years and have been retired and living home and they can't do their job anymore, instead of reminding them of that or trying to reorient someone back into our universe or our reality, try to join them in theirs. Oh, what did you do for work? Or what do you do every day? Or just, talk about it. Tell them, yes, we're going to get them to work and we're going to take care of whatever their issue is at that moment. You need to reassure them it's okay and that you're going to take care of any problem that they have, regardless of how realistic that is. And then distract and use some distraction techniques. And we do work on some, families on one-to-one basis, but in general, a snack, an enjoyable activity. The person likes to be busy. They might go for a walk. As long as they know you're going to get them to work, you're going to take care of whatever that issue is that's making them agitated or uneasy at that moment.
Right.
And focus on the feelings that's being displayed.
Yeah. Because, people with dementia, we talked about the analogy with kids.
Right.
Okay, first we had the babies. Now we're talking about
toddlers.
toddlers.
Now they're toddlers.
So you and I are on the same page. I
Remember
see that.
that?
Yes, the toddlers, because people with Alzheimer's do not like the word no.
No.
And
yes, it's
just
a
like
trigger.
toddlers do not like the word no.
Right.
So you want to try to eliminate the word no out of your vocabulary, just like with the toddler, because otherwise you're going to get a temper tantrum.
Exactly.
Just like a toddler.
Before you can even get to the distraction.
Exactly.
technique. So say, yes, you know what? We are going to get you to work. Here, let's go have a snack. You got to eat something. Throw in humor. Use humor to really kind of de-escalate the situation. And again, don't overreact to whatever's going on with them, but absolutely enjoying that person where they are, because as you talked about them, toddlers, a lot of times if they're talking about their mom and their dad, you can kind of gauge where they are that day, that moment, or that time period by what they may be talking about or expressing. If they're calling you mom a lot and you're actually the spouse or the daughter, they may be either they may be back in that time period in their mind,
Right.
because literally with Alzheimer's disease, the initial indication of a problem is the memories aren't being formed, basically. As time goes on in the disease process, their memory is being erased backwards. And you want to join that person where they are and not try to reorient them into our reality, because it really is foreign to them and they don't have the ability to do that anymore.
Right, because
we have to do
with
that.
our memories, the first things we learn are the last things we forget, and the last things we learn are the first things we forget when Alzheimer's takes over.
Right.
And so that's one reason that you can't teach somebody with Alzheimer's something brand new. That's
Right.
why somebody that never used a cell phone before and they're just used to the old-fashioned pick up the landline, they're not going to be able to learn how to use a cell phone. They just won't be able to do it.
And now with all these new brain games that are coming out too,
Yes.
Luminosity, and it's all on the computer.
Right.
Try to teach someone how to play these games on an iPad or a tablet when they've never seen an iPad or a tablet or ever used one. It's going to be a struggle. There are other ways to exercise the mind than to try to force someone to learn how to use a computer.
Because it's not familiar to them.
Right. And they're not able to learn new
And they're not
things.
able to learn it. It's not familiar to them.
Right.
I have an example, kind of the opposite example.
Yeah.
My little grandson, when he was about 2 or 3 years old, he came to visit, and I pulled out all the toys that I had that my son
He wanted
had
to play.
played with, right? And so one of the things was the pull toy, that it was a telephone, that had the little handle with
Right.
it that you would pick up, and it had the rotary dial, and it made music when you dial it. And here's a toddler who's 3 years old, and his whole life he's seen nothing but cell phones.
Yes, so he's used to using that. Or you've got
So
someone.
he didn't know what to do, and he had no clue what this was. And if you tell him it's a phone, he didn't understand, because he's used to something going up.
What he sees is an old phone.
a little tiny piece of plastic up to your ear, not something like this.
Right.
So you can kind of use that as a backwards analogy, because
Go back to what they used in their past. What games did they like to play? You can play, cards, get, puzzles together, anything like that they can relate to, but don't try to introduce something brand new, because unlike a child, they can't learn the new information.
Right, and you're
It's
just going to
be
frustrate them.
and yourself.
Yeah, and yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Yeah.
This is good stuff. I mean, this is what it really is. This is
Right.
This is the crux of caregiving, learning how to deal with
Right.
these situations as they come up, and be armed with the answers and armed with the information of how to maneuver. I
Right.
mean, because you could have plan A, and if plan A doesn't work, you go to
You better
plan
have
B,
plan
and you
B.
C and D, and there's how many
Right.
plans that you need in order
Right.
to make it work.
It
Because
is-
you need an arsenal of
Right.
all of these
Tools.
tools.
And basically, in your toolkit or
That's
in your
right.
tool belt, you need to have all the tools, because what you use today may work fine today. It may not work tomorrow.
Perfect example.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So this is good stuff, Dawn. So when we're going to take our next commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking more about how to use tools to help us in challenging behaviors with our loved ones who have dementia. So we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Do you need the advice of an elder law attorney, but perhaps
even among their caregivers? When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Somewhere at the corner of bewildered and confused is a lost mother, a father, a sibling, a grandparent. Wandering is a common symptom of Alzheimer's or related dementias and can often make those who care for a loved one feel just as lost. If you're looking for a place that's safe and secure, look to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Feelings of depression, isolation, and frustration are common among persons living with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's common among those who care for them, too. It takes a lot of patience and courage. It also takes knowing when you can no longer do it alone. At Arden Courts, memory care is all we do. Talk to us. We know, we understand, we can help. Don't let guilt keep you from making the right decision. Visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines.
1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
And we are back. I'm here with Dawn Epstein. She's the executive director of the Alzheimer's Care Resource Center here in South Florida. And we're talking about how to help caregivers deal with challenging behaviors. As we know, there are so many different behaviors that are hard to deal with as caregivers. And if you're prepared, and at least if you know about them, if you know that it could happen to you, we're giving you some tools for your virtual toolbox, like Dawn said, to put in there and pull out the right tool at the right time that maybe can help you. So Dawn, let's keep talking about some of these challenging behaviors. What about eating? I know that sometimes is a hard thing for caregivers to deal with because sometimes their loved ones don't use utensils the right way. Sometimes they use their fingers. Sometimes they want to go to a restaurant and it's kind of embarrassing to them. How do you help caregivers to deal with that?
Well, first, most of the time, the issues really are just modifying the types of food that you make available to your loved one. It's a bigger issue, like you said, the embarrassment. If you want to go to a restaurant, sometimes it's really, again, it goes back to education and with the disease process and to understand their loved one isn't trying to aggravate them by using the fork and then or forgetting how to do it when they've done this a million times. It really is the disease process. So, if they're no longer able to use a fork and a knife, you go to finger foods. They can eat carrots, things that they can still eat themselves. We want them, the goal is to maintain their independence as long as possible.
Right.
So we don't want to start feeding someone if they're still able to eat finger foods, because and maybe you give them some dips and let them dip it into ranch dressing, and as long as it is healthy and not bad for them and it's going to taste good to them, it doesn't matter.
Because at least they're still using their abilities to feed themselves. Their hand-eye coordination is still in process, and it doesn't matter if they're not using the right utensil, as long as they're still able to do that. You want to encourage that.
Absolutely.
And you know what's amazing? It's amazing all the different things you can put between two slices of bread
you
and make
creative.
it a little sandwich and cut it into squares, just like we did with the kids, and let them pick it up. You can put just about anything between two pieces of bread.
Make it interesting for them, too. If you have the ones that are refusing to eat or feel like they just ate, no, I just ate, you can distract them briefly if you want to, or I've had caregivers that just have, I had one particular client of mine that just wouldn't sit to eat. He was too busy and had things to do. So we started him on Ensure because he could eat that on the run. And we got smart and we started putting bowls of nuts and snack foods around the house.
Healthy things.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so he would walk around and he would end up snacking all day on these nuts and good healthy foods. And then he would go out to certain restaurants. He would always have his bagels and lox. So that was one thing. He could have that every day. We followed him, had him weighed on a regular basis. Now he is back up to a regular weight.
Because he's getting his calories even though he's walking.
And nutrition.
Yes.
But he's still maintaining an active life. But
Yes.
there's ways, and sometimes you do have to be creative. Like you said, if you have to make the food more interesting, make it in more interesting shapes, you might have to, depending on the person's likes and dislikes, spice it up a little bit.
Because they lose the taste buds. They're not as, the sweet, the salty, the bitter, the spicy.
It tastes bland unless you have something that's salty or something that's very sweet. So,
and that's why a lot of older people love sweets, because that's one of the taste buds that is still there as we age.
Right.
Yeah.
And we don't want to just load up on sweets, but there are ways to find foods that have a more powerful taste, so that it's something that they're going to enjoy eating, and you're going to be able to get them to eat.
Right.
Because and make sure also, as the disease progresses, you can have some issues with swallowing. So if it's really a concern that someone isn't eating, have that looked at. You can talk to your doctor and make sure there's nothing medically that's going on for any change that might occur, whether it be eating, drinking. If the person becomes very agitated, we see a lot of people that seek out or reach out for help when their loved one has become combative.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have something to go back, though, about the swallowing you just talked about, because something for caregivers to be aware of, because sometimes people will, we call it squirrel. They squirrel their food, and they stuff their mouth full, and they put it here, and they look like a little chipmunk or a little squirrel with the nuts, in their jaws. And this is very dangerous, because they can actually stuff that and then try to swallow it and choke. Right. And choking is an issue with people because obviously the brain is changing. And, with true Alzheimer's, there's a lot of different types of dementia, but the most prevalent one, as we know, is Alzheimer's disease. And Alzheimer's, it creates problems, because as the brain is dying, all the cells are dying off the brain can't tell the body what to do and how to function.
Right.
And one of those functions is swallowing.
Yes, and that's one thing a lot of people don't think about.
Right.
Is the swallowing as a function, because really it does, the mind has to, even these autonomic systems, your body isn't able to do them anymore, because the brain literally is the mainstay of the body.
It's the computer for our body. Right. And if the computer is missing parts, basically,
then
another analogy,
shut down.
Yeah, things are going to shut down, and you don't have that. So that's something to watch for too. And if someone is starting to choke or cough when they're drinking water, you have to be careful, because that leads to aspiration pneumonia.
Right, which is, and pneumonia being one of the leading causes of death in older individuals, but definitely when dealing with Alzheimer's disease, because along with what you were saying, Marcia, also the immune system is being affected, the body in whole. So the person doesn't have the ability or the strength or the capacity to really fight off ailments like they did when they were healthy. So a lot of times you have to deal with that, and obviously make sure the person is, you've got, if the person has issues with swallowing, going back to that, you can make the food softer. There are ways, we don't have to modify and keep it safe. Softer foods, they call it mechanical soft in the hospital.
Kind of mush it up a little bit.
Right. You don't have to puree it necessarily.
You don't have to puree it, but avoid maybe chunks of steak and chunks of meat, and you can cut it into little baby bites and things like that, and help them. But those are signs, those are warning signs. If someone's choking or coughing when they're swallowing, that's a warning sign, and you need to have it checked out.
Right, definitely, and definitely. And when you're eating, we were talking about the taste buds issue. I had individuals, we made it's like almost a fruit kind of gelatin, and would eat just pretty much a bite of everything with the fruit, the sweet stuff with it. And that helped get them to eat the food that they needed to eat along with to kind of mix it together.
If it were me and I needed to be encouraged to eat,
we needed the sweet stuff.
I think you just take a big bottle of Hershey's syrup and just put chocolate on everything.
You know what? You get creative again. It goes back to creativity. We could have a show on just creative ideas from caregivers.
Yeah, exactly. Because that would work for me. Anything with chocolate on it, I don't care. It could be peas, and I'd eat it with chocolate on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if it works, and that's the only way you're going to get somebody to eat, what's wrong with that, right? You have your sweets and eat it too.
You do
Take
whatever
and eat
you
it
have.
too.
And going back to just difficult, talking about the eating, but bathing is one.
Yes, let's talk about that. That's a biggie.
That's a huge struggle that caregivers have. Their loved one doesn't want to bathe, thinks they already bathed, and a lot of times we find that they're afraid. They have a lot of fear in the shower of the water coming down on them. But there are ways to try to make the bathing experience less frustrating for everyone. And one is if you think about yourself, you're going into the shower. It's cold. They don't fully understand maybe what you're doing.
Someone's ripping my clothes off, and I don't know why.
And it could be embarrassing, too. Yes. Obviously, you're taking their clothes off. So that goes back to communication. Obviously, we're going to tell your loved one what we're doing. They don't. If the shower really scares them, they can do it. A sponge bath or something a little more. If we have to go to that, or get a shower head that's removable, so that the water can go on them in a less threatening manner. And that's. We would definitely recommend having a shower chair and having a handheld shower if
and
it
even
becomes
letting
an
them
issue.
Sometimes be in control of that shower, because if they're in control of where that water's going, they're like. Another analogy.
Yeah.
All right. I rode on a ski-doo, and I was on the back, and I was scared because
you're not in control.
I'm not in control, and you put me in the driver's seat, and I'm like, woohoo, this is fun, and I go real fast. But if I was the passenger, I didn't like it so much.
Right. Exactly. That's let them have control if that's certainly an issue.
Yes.
Also, temperature. It could go down. It might be cold. So it could be a temperature, and try to heat it up. Run to the hot water a little bit before you get the person in there. You can cover them with a towel before they get in. They don't have to sit there stark naked.
And get the towel wet. It's okay to get them wet and have the towel there to give them that comfort that they are being covered.
Right. If the towel gets wet, so be it. I've had people say, she'll get in with her clothes on. And then once you get in the shower, if the person really won't take their clothes off, or they insist on getting in with their clothes on, what happens when your clothes get wet? You want to take them off because they feel they're sticking to you. So then the person might be more willing to take them off. So again, the standard ways of bathing and getting in the shower and following the steps, we may have to modify our expectations a little bit based on the fact they really don't understand the steps. And cueing, tell them what you're doing and break down what a bathing, eating, or whatever.
In simple steps.
Simple steps.
Yes.
One step at a time. Into one simple commands. Because a person may not be able to follow the 3 steps. Take this, wash your hair, rinse your hair. One thing at a time. And make sure you as a caregiver have ample time to do that activity. Because a lot of times it's compromised by we're in a hurry.
Yes.
We've got to be at your doctor's appointment, and it takes, it might take 4 hours to get ready to go to the doctor. And that's not ideal. Be aware of that.
Don't rush. Don't plan on rushing. If you have to rush,
Come down to planning
differently.
If you need assistance, then seek that out. Whether it's a family caregiver or whether it's paid help, look into those options so that you don't get into a situation where you're going to do it all yourself, and that's where people end up burning out, caregiver burnout, and can't do it anymore. Now all of a sudden we're in a crisis.
Yeah.
So now we have to intervene.
Yeah.
Kind of do this earlier in the beginning.
Don't be a martyr either.
Right. Because, yes, you may be married for 50 years and to death do we part. We understand that. But think about it if it was the other way around. If you knew, because obviously your loved one no longer has the ability to understand how this is affecting you or really that they have a problem in a lot of cases.
Right.
Would you, if that were you, want to be this much of a burden, but to be a burden and actually to see your loved one going through all of this? You wouldn't want that either. You'd want them to seek the help that they need because you love that person. And it's the same. They still love the caregivers. You're their go-to person. They just don't understand the implications that their disease is having on the caregivers. By nature of the disease itself, They don't have the ability.
And I think caregivers, that's one of the biggest things that I find is they don't like to ask for help.
Absolutely.
And I don't know, a caregiver who has done it without suffering, either mentally, emotionally, physically, or all 3.
Getting to that point where they can't take it anymore, and now they have to ask for help. Where if you can understand, this is not a job one person can do.
Right.
Ever. It's just not going to be. So prepare yourself.
That's
for
why
that
they call
and
it the
seek help.
36-hour day. You can't
do
24 hours are in a day, and it takes 36
Right.
hours at least, and
Right.
several people to do that. So we
understand
want to
that.
let everyone know that this
Right.
is so difficult. And, if you're experiencing these challenges, we want you to know it's okay to ask for help. And matter of
Absolutely.
fact, it's strongly
Necessary.
encouraged.
It's
Yes.
necessary.
Yes.
Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to handle the situation and to battle every challenge on your own. It's just not possible.
No, it's not. Let's
we all
talk
have our
about
limits.
another behavior I think that a lot of people don't find pleasant, and that is incontinence in
Yes.
adults. Okay,
Yeah.
because that is
Right.
another whole level of caregiving.
Yes, and that and a lot of times that is when people have to seek other type of living arrangements too, because it becomes too much. Unfortunately, with the disease, along with what we talked about before, the body, there's changes that are going on with the body's ability to function like it did before.
Because
Just
again, the brain
isn't
can't
telling it what to
tell
do. Yeah.
the kidneys and everything else what it's
Right.
supposed to do and when it's supposed to do it.
Yes, I have someone now. Unfortunately, he lacks the ability to know urine on bowels when he has to go, and sometimes will be in the bathroom to urinate and will have a bowel movement, and it's unfortunate, but he isn't aware, doesn't know. Yes, you can look at, obviously, if these things start occurring, you want to seek medical advice, see the doctor, and make sure there's no urinary tract infection or, God forbid, any other issues going on that could lead to it. Otherwise, you're going to have to start looking into incontinence assistance, such as the Depends, and they do make them now a lot like the underwear.
Some are pull-ups.
Right.
I think pull-ups are probably easier and better than the other
Under the
kind
di-
that
yeah.
are like with the tabs, like the
Oh, yeah,
old-fashioned
no.
diapers. You want to, because it's a dignity issue too. And they do make
Absolutely.
them two ways. They make them
Right.
with elastic as a pull-up, but they also
Right.
make them with tabs, and they're like adult diapers. And
Yeah.
and I always recommend the pull-ups.
I would do the pull-ups too, because remember, it's obviously embarrassing to them. I mean, these individuals may be compromised in their ability to remember and make judgments, but that's the social graces are very well intact.
Yeah.
With Alzheimer's disease, I mean, to wade through the disease process, so they know if they're embarrassed, they're not going to want to say in the middle of a doctor's office, "Oh, you need to change?" I mean. So discretion is advised, but be discreet and treat your loved one like, don't treat them like a child or like a young kid. No baby talk. None of that is really, just don't do it. They keep that
it's
dignity.
disrespectful.
Absolutely.
It's inappropriate. It's disrespectful. And, you want to, again, we're talking about maintaining their dignity and their independence and their dignity
Right.
for as long as possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like I said, for a lot of people, the incontinence issue is a huge factor in keeping someone at home. And this is another huge hurdle for caregivers and to face and to even talk about.
Yeah.
I find caregivers that won't even talk about placing their loved one at any level at the point where they are. They wait until perhaps it gets too
Sometimes
too
that's
much.
a trigger right there with the incontinence. It's like, well,
big trigger.
When the big trigger,
Yeah.
when my loved one can't, go to the bathroom anymore.
Or doesn't know me anymore.
Or doesn't know me anymore.
Yeah.
And, when I have to clean the messes up and it's
Right.
disgusting and I just can't handle that's when I'm going to place.
Right.
And, some people, that's their threshold. But
Yes.
other people have different thresholds, and everybody has a different threshold.
Absolutely.
And, that's not the one that you should look to, because people a lot of times are much better served by coming into a community like Arden Courts a lot sooner, because then they're aging in place, and then they're getting the support that they need as they're going through all these different difficulties.
And they're able to maintain a healthy life for themselves too, because statistics now show, I've heard too, so it's roughly 65% caregivers, if they do not seek necessary respite, are likely to become ill or possibly pass away before the person with Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah, and you don't want that.
It's a scary statistic.
And I've seen it myself. I've been
Absolutely,
too many times
yes.
to a hospital to have a wife sign papers for her husband to move in to Arden Courts, because all of a sudden she's down and out and she has no help.
She's in a hospital
and
or in
she's
a
in a
rehab.
hospital, and luckily they were able to be aware enough to be able to do that, and God forbid it wasn't a real problem, but don't wait for a crisis.
I had a very sad situation where the adult children were the ones that contacted me. They didn't know how bad it was, and Dad was maintaining. He was a primary caregiver for their mom, who was suffering from Alzheimer's disease, and he passed away. He died, and when the kids, really stepped in and saw what was going on,
how bad it really was.
Yeah, they're convinced that the caregiving literally killed him. That he was trying to do it all, wouldn't accept help. Said he had it under control, and he really, like I said, it's not possible to do all of this.
Right, and the stress probably killed him. And,
absolutely,
and stress will kill. I mean, that's a given. Doctors will tell you stress will kill. So it is possible to die from the stress of caregiving.
Yes. Yeah, you can have heart attacks literally just from stress.
Yeah, that's true. We're going to take our last commercial break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Being unable to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's or related dementias, even among their caregivers. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Somewhere at the corner of bewildered and confused is a lost mother, a father, a sibling, a grandparent. Wandering is a common symptom of Alzheimer's or related dementias and can often make those who care for a loved one feel just as lost. If you're looking for a place that's safe and secure, look to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Feelings of depression, isolation, and frustration are common among persons living with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's common among those who care for them, too. It takes a lot of patience and courage. It also takes knowing when you can no longer do it alone. At Arden Courts, memory care is all we do. Talk to us. We know, we understand, we can help. Don't let guilt keep you from making the right decision. Visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Being unable to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's or related dementias, even among their caregivers. When the time comes for you to decide that
.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Hi, and we're back. I'm Marcia Teele, your host, and I'm with Dawn Epstein from the Alzheimer's Care Resource Center. We're talking about challenging behaviors, and I want to touch on one, Dawn, that's pretty important that we haven't talked about, a lot of people don't talk about, and that's a combative behavior. Let's address that just briefly.
Absolutely. And it can be quite shocking, especially if this isn't a pattern of behavior that they've ever seen before. But people with Alzheimer's disease, you can see personality changes. They can become combative. Again, this is a behavior that it's communicating there's something wrong. There's something going on. This person is obviously angry and agitated about something. And so as caregivers, try to find out what the source of that anger and agitation is. In the meantime, addressing it, which again, it's important to, obviously, if you are completely in danger and they're going to hit you, you have to leave.
Leave the situation.
You have to be safe and get yourself call 911 or whoever you have to call. But to de-escalate something, if you see it getting to this point, maybe they threw their cane or something where it looks like it could go in that direction. Maintain your own sense of calm.
Right.
And address at that point in time. What's going on, what's happening, what's upsetting you.
And try to avoid those triggers that's going to really upset somebody.
Right.
Just stay out of danger yourself.
That's why it's important to identify what's going on in terms of what's happening, what's triggering it, so that you can remove them from the environment, or and obviously prevent it from happening again. But in that moment, addressing the individual, like, you are here to help. What is going on? What has made you so angry? If it's you, then obviously I'm so sorry. I did not mean to. It's, again, Don't try to explain. Don't try to get them back into our reality and say, what is wrong with you? I didn't do.
Saying
No.
sorry really works. Even
It
if
does.
you weren't at fault, it's okay to say you're sorry.
Even if they're paranoid, and I get this too, you stole from me. Where's my money?
Yep.
You know what? I am sorry. I misplayed whatever you have to say.
Right.
But you are going to, again, you're going to take care of that.
Right.
And reassure them, because that agitation, that anxiety, address that.
Right. So we want to end up by letting you tell about the Alzheimer's Care Resource Center. If someone wants to contact you, what number can they call?
I'll give you the main number. You can ask for me, Dawn Epstein. We actually do free initial coaching sessions with families. You can walk in off the street, call, and we'll schedule an appointment, obviously preferably, but we will meet with you on the spot for free and help get a plan together for you at any time along the caregiving journey.
That's awesome. And what's that number, Dawn?
The number is 561-588-4545.
Call Dawn at the Alzheimer's Care Resource Center. Get plugged in to all the resources that they have to offer, caregivers, support groups, educational, all kinds of information they have.
Everything.
Call Art and Courts for more information. Don't forget, call Art and Courts for your free 36-hour day book. And in the meantime, we'll see you next week, but give somebody a hug because they need it and so do you.
Thanks
We'll
for
catch you
joining us
next
for
time.
this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of